Hi Rock and Metal Guardians, I'm Dane. Welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to talk about more bands that are my favorite. In a previous video I did my top 10 favorite bands of all time, counting down from 10 to 1. This is a little different. Instead of having this band goes in this number and that sort of thing, I'm just going to have two tiers, a tier 2 and a tier 3. The previous video would be my tier 1 bands. So let's get started. Tier 3, Santana. Those first 3 albums are my favorite. There are others I like in the catalog. I like the live albums Lotus and Moonflower. I also like Caravanserai very much. There's a couple songs I don't like so much, but overall, a wonderful album, a lot of great guitar playing. ELO. And I owe a debt of gratitude for liking ELO because of my mom. My mom is who got me started. My dad liked music too, but it was really my mom who got me into ELO. One day I come home from school and a New World record sitting on my bed by the pillows. She did that a lot for me. So if it wasn't for Mom, I would not be an ELO fan. So I hold them dear to my heart. Whenever I listen to ELO, I think of my mom. The band, yes. I don't like everything they have. They have a huge catalog. I probably like 25% of it, but I do like them enough to put them in this category. Pantera. Down, being a person who's grown up in New Orleans, I don't like Down because it's a bias. I legitimately like that kind of groove, well, not kind of, it's a groove metal, essentially, what we have here. Blue Oyster Cult. Those first, like Santana, those first three albums are my favorite. There are others I like. I like some of their live material, On Your Feet or On Your Knees. I like Extraterrestrial Live. I love Agents of Fortune, probably my favorite. I'm not this positive, but if I had to guess, my favorite's probably Fire of Unknown Origin. Okay, Metallica. There's a caveat with this one. I only like the first 5 albums and one song off their new album, the last song on the new album, Inamorata, however you pronounce that. So Metallica, not the top 10 it used to be, just because everything starting with Load and Reload, just not my cup of tea. Rainbow and / Dio. And by Rainbow, I mean the first 3 albums with Dio, and of course a bunch of Dio solo work. Okay, The Damned. I'm not a big punk rock guy, but just love The Damned. My sister got me into them, as well as a good friend in college. I got to see them live Halloween night many years ago at the House of Blues. This was probably in somewhere in a 2002 range, maybe later than that. I have to look that up, but anyway, interesting thing about The Damned is they introduced keyboards. I guess 5 or 6 albums in, maybe with the Strawberries album, which is much different from their earlier work. Their first 3 albums are pretty much true punk, especially that first album, Damned. But great band. If you're into punk music and you're not familiar with them, I'd give them a try. All right, next is Celtic Frost / Triptykon. Lots to be said about the early, see a pattern here? Lots to be said about those early Celtic Frost albums. The Emperor's Return EP, Morbid Tales, Into the Pandemonium, and what am I forgetting? To Megatherion. And of course, Monotheist, a comeback album. And Triptykon has 2 albums and an EP and a live album. They kind of picked up where Celtic Frost left off. The good Celtic Frost, I should say. All right, only has 4 albums, this group, but I love them so much. The band Sleep. Lots to be said about Al Cisneros, Matt Pike, and the rest of the band. Sorry, I can't remember the drummer's name. Monolord, if you're not familiar with them, they have 5 or 6 albums. They're essentially a doom metal band. They have some instrumental stuff that I like, but stuff with lyrics is very what's the word I'm looking for? It's very hypnotic. The Empress Rising is a great album. It's their first album, I believe. All right, here's my tier 2 bands. This should not be shock to many of you if you've seen my top 10 list. Some of the same stuff, but some of the more heavier stuff is in here, like my tier 3 stuff. All right, Pink Floyd, Genesis. Early Genesis, everything up to and including, say, Abacab, King Crimson, almost everything by King Crimson I love. All right, Kiss. Where I came in as a music lover would be with Kiss is Alive. That's what really, if it wasn't for that, I don't know what my musical taste would be like. But back to Mom again. My mom would, every time Kiss had a new album out, my mom would have the album waiting for me on my bed by the pillows, like I said, with the yellow. She even met Gene Simmons once. She took her lunch break to go off and get his solo album signed from, the store doesn't exist anymore. It was a record store called the Music Box on Veterans Highway here in Metairie, a suburb of New Orleans. So Kiss, 3rd grade, 9 years old is where I got started with me, because my friends at the time suggested it for me. So I've been hooked ever since, or for the most part. Next, Alice Cooper, both the band and the artist. Here's an avant-garde band I love so much, Swans. Earlier stuff, the best, kind of a Godflesh type influence. A lot of drony, rhythmic beats that they stay on and then veer off into different areas. That's just an oversimplification of the band, but Swans. Aerosmith, early Aerosmith. Queensryche, same pattern here. Early Queensryche, everything up to and including Promised Land, and then maybe a couple songs here and there afterwards. The new stuff is okay, but I don't find it as compelling, even though they've gone back to their heavy roots with Todd La Torre on vocals. He's a great vocalist. There's still something missing, and I'm not saying it's Jeff Tate. If I had to guess what's missing, Chris DeGarmo. So, and Scott Rockenfield. Next, Iron Maiden, Megadeth. 9 Inch Nails. Got into them back in the day in the early 90s when I started bartending as I was working my way through college. And one of the guys that came in, his name was Dak. He had an NIN shirt. I was like, what is that? And he told me about it. Went and investigated. Again, been hooked ever since. Motorhead. Whether we're talking early Motorhead, later Motorhead, in between Motorhead, Orgasmatron period Motorhead, 1916, you name it. There's 3 or 4 Motorhead albums I don't own, but for the most part, as far as discography goes, I have everything in a collection except a couple, 3 or 4. High on Fire, Matt Pike, again. Everything by them. It's just very heavy, dense. Matt Pike is such a great guitar player. Can't say enough about him. He's definitely in my top 15. Electric Wizard, stoner, doom metal, everything by them. Too bad they broke up after Wizard Bloody Wizard. Love them to death. Since high school, next band, since junior or senior year, Cirith Ungol. They have a small discography, but I know some people don't care for Tim Baker's vocals. They don't bother me at all. If I had to think about it right now off the spot, I would say of the most non-mainstream heavy metal bands of all time, they're my favorite. All right, Scorpions. Whether that first album, kind of psychedelic / krautrock album, which I think is phenomenal because you have the 16-year-old Michael Schenker on guitar, or the more bluesy Hendrix-styled stuff with Uli John Roth in the 70s that follow. Those are some wonderful, where you're talking about In Trance, Virgin Killer, Taken by Force. Those are just phenomenal. And then the 80s, the early 80s stuff, well, mid to late 80s, Blackout, Animal Magnetism, Love at First Sting. That's probably the last album, and then I jumped off the Scorpions train, and nothing after that appeals to me. I've tried listening to the Rock Forever CD. There's a couple songs. I love Mickey D as a drummer coming over from Motorhead, but it just I'm gonna give it another couple listens later in the month, but for right now, it's nothing resonates with me with that album. I'm glad they tried to go back to their roots, but their 80s roots, but it's just not doing anything for me. Jimi Hendrix. Short discography, but he was a pioneer. And I'll leave it at that. So Hendrix, Humble Pie, the dual guitaring of Peter Frampton and Steve Marriott, and then later on Clem Clemson. Something I can put on a Humble Pie record CD and listen from start to finish. How many bands you can do that with? Queen, another band, tend towards their earlier stuff, especially those first 3 albums. Those, in my opinion, are their best albums: Queen 1, Queen 2, and Sheer Heart Attack. I like News of the World a lot too, Parts of the Game. Here's the thing, I like half of A Day at the Races and half of A Night at the Opera. It's the way it is. Finally, Grand Funk Railroad. Got into them, one of the first bands I ever got into in the young age of grammar school. I remember my dad coming home one day with, or my mom, a 45 of We're an American Band, and we're an American Band, and it was a gold colored vinyl 45, which I don't have anymore. But so these bands mean the world to me, in addition to the 10 I mentioned in another video. So there you have it. Those are the other main go-to bands that I can reach on the shelf and just dive into, and they never get old, they never get stale. So thanks for watching. Before I go, I'm just going to tell you about what's coming up on Monday. I will be reviewing the new live release from Motorhead. It's called We Play Rock and Roll Live at Montreux Jazz Festival. 2 CD set from Motorhead that came out today. This will be starting my series Monday Morning Critic, so I hope you'll watch. Thanks for joining.